Yeah. Um, Good morning and good evening to everyone. From myself and Mike Peterson, we would like to thank everyone that's joining us this evening and your morning. Um, yes, and this is the first time we will be doing a on live interview striptal conference um, from from Africa. So um, since 1965. Orthman innovation has been changing the face of agricultural. And we focus um, on three important principles: quality, innovation, and integrity. And before we start off with this live interview, I would like to just give you more of a bit of a background and introduce you guys to our company. And I'll be sharing with you guys our video. So just take a minute, watch our video, and we will definitely come within a few minutes and join you guys live with some questions and some very important questions from farmers and answers.
Out here, when you've got a problem, you need a solution. And when there's a need, there's an opportunity. This farm has been here for over 50 years. Orthman Manufacturing started on this land, in this barn, and with one man convinced there's got to be a better way. What started with the Orthman family farm has grown into 50 years of farming innovation and quality, and a manufacturer helping growers be more efficient around the world. Just because something's been done before doesn't mean it's been done right. And that's where Orthman found the passion for innovation. And the spark of an idea changed an entire industry. We understand the power and performance you need and the excellence and quality you deserve. The smallest of details are important to us. Shapes, corners, edges, every last detail. There's a standard of excellence, and we take pride in setting the bar and pushing beyond it. Using the latest in design technology, Orthman is continuing a 50-year tradition of innovation for farmers. From the basics to the breakthroughs. Like hollow structural tubing that has now become a standard in the industry. The durability and long life of Orthman row crop cultivators. Our innovative stack-fold toolbar technology. And the common sense utility of the track tiller. Orthman is constantly going one step further, leading the way by developing innovative GPS guidance systems or the unparalleled performance of the one-tripper precision strip till machine. A machine that pioneered strip tillage around the world. And the tradition of Orthman's innovation doesn't end there. No matter what challenges lay ahead, Orthman will continue to lead the way. Your common problems have a unique solution. That's Orthman. Now let's get to work.
That's it. So thanks guys for joining that. I think, let's kick off with some questions. Mike, I think, we covered some questions last week of placing fertilizer placement, especially depth. I think, the topics this week, there's obviously between broadcasting and banding fertilizer. Mike, I know there's a lot of guys having these questions about the differences between broadcasting and banding. What is what is your sight, or what do you see in between the differences?
You bet, Brian. After almost 40 years now in the field as a soil scientist, in the last 15 years with Orthman Manufacturing as a soil scientist, I've been looking at, are there really differences for the grower out there, whether it is for you guys over in South Africa or those of us here in the States? We really like to find out why is it that broadcast shows up so late in the season compared to what we can use when we band it and put it right there in the root zone for the plant to be able to contact right away. Because for all of you, this might sound a little simple, but it's the concept that roots don't have eyes, they don't have fingers, they don't have a nose, they can't smell, they can't find the fertilizer, they've got to run into it. So as they run into it and you put it in the zone where you've strip tilled, for instance, or you've deep banded it somehow, the plant's going to find that without any kind of problem and get access to it. So broadcasting has been the easy way, so to speak, because you can put a big kind of floating rig or a dry spread broadcaster with a way to blow it out on the ground. But it's scattered here and there, and it's not really getting to the root. Unfortunately, we feed weeds. And Brian, that's something that all growers don't want to feed. We have enough pressure with weeds. We'd rather feed the plant that is our target because we're trying to grow a crop that we want to have a good yield out of, and let's not feed weeds.
Correct. No, definitely. And Mike, I think, just to cover on that, I've seen some guys discussing about, the differences between broadcasting and banding, and please, fill me in here if I'm, not correct, but what I have noticed, if you always had to go out in the field, and if you had to go and look at a crop or at a corn, maize, and before we carry on, I know I do see some guys joining. Mike, sorry, this is going to be in Afrikaans. As julle asseblief sit 'n comment daarso as julle navrae het. Dankie dat julle vanaand saam met ons is op hierdie Striptil Conference. Maar as daar enige vrae is, asseblief stuur dit deur op die comments en ons sal definitief vir julle antwoord. So Mike, just to go back to, between the broadcasting and banding, what I've seen and what I've learned is some guys saying that if you look at a corn or a millie, what we say, the leaves are actually like this. So pretty much when it rains, that water falls down to the roots. So that's where your nutrients needs to be for your corn to absorb water and to obviously get that intake from nutrients. Mike, I don't know, am I correct on that?
Well, yes, that's partly true. The other part is that when we strip till, we're really opening up a particular zone that is not that big underneath the plant, and we want that fertilizer, whatever it is, whether it's dry or anhydrous ammonia or a liquid product, to be right in the zone where the plant's going to grow its root system. The other thing that I've been studying roots since 1981, and it's incredibly important to have a better understanding that where those roots grow, how they grow, and how they access nutrients in the soil profile is very, very important. In strip till, we modify that some. We help that become more a concentrated effort.
Okay. Yeah, Mike, I think, then The next question is, should I strip till with liquid or dry fertilizer? I think that this is a lot of customers, a lot of growers is wondering which is the two. I think a lot of the guys in Africa is going to say, well, we'll rather stick to dry than liquid. But what do you see in between the differences on that, Mike?
Well, that's always a good question, and I am going to defer to the grower as to how he would rather do it, because we have both systems work fantastic. The one thing that that as you apply a dry fertilizer, whether you broadcast it or put it in a band, it's going to be slower to the plant root in accessing it and getting readily available into the plant so that it can help feed it. It's not like lime. If you have to apply lime takes between 100 and 150 days after its application where it becomes effective. So if you're applying dry, though, you're still looking at a conversion of the water, making it into a soluble form that goes through the soil by rainfall or irrigation. And then also time for the soil bacteria and the mycorrhizal fungi to start making it available to the plant. And there's a time lapse there. Now with liquid, it's readily available. In fact, it's available the second that you put it in the ground with a liquid fertilizer. So the effectiveness jumps way up on a scale, and that's important. Now, for dry, though, the handling capabilities for you guys in South Africa, I think, are very much appropriate. And we now have the tools that we can put attached to our strip till rig, the one tripper, and put them right where there needs to be. And I think that leads to the next question, that where we want to put it is kind of a secret of the sauce, so to speak, what we find from this southeast part of the United States. That's an old expression. You want to put it where you know the roots are going to be in the most active zone. The temperature is right. The soil moisture is doing its exchange, and also the oxygen supply is fine to the roots. And that is at about 17 to 18 centimeters below the soil surface. So think about that, ladies and gentlemen. That's real important.
Yeah, no, that's great information, Mike. I think, just maybe going back to last week's questions that we had, somebody, Vian, just outside Lichtenberg, commented that he asked the question is about what is the ideal depth on the different levels of liquid fertilizer below the seed. Is there different levels on that, Mike, on liquid fertilizer?
Brian, there is it's a preference of where you're putting your majority of your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the N, P, and K. And then if you are putting a micronutrient with that liquid product, such as a zinc sulfate or something of that nature, you want to make sure that you don't have it too close to the seed, depending upon the salt index of that liquid fertilizer. Also, we want to make sure that it's readily available for where the root is about 10 centimeters below where the seed is placed. So if the seed is placed at 5 centimeters, we want to make sure that we've got that other material down then at 15 centimeters, which is approximately just the right spot for it to happen. At that point, the soil temperature really is what we call amenable for the roots to do their best activity, which is real ideal. And we want to make sure that we put it in the right spot so that you get the biggest bang for that.
No, perfect. I know I do see some comments coming through here. I don't know, Mike, can you see the comments?
No, I can't.
All right. So there's a few comments that's coming through, especially from Gerrit, which is he's in the Brits district, Afri area.
Okay.
He's more asking questions on. I know we're still going to, guys. We're still going to get to how we can use only anhydrous ammonia. We are going to get to those questions. I think let's quickly just go to Gerard's question here. Is how good is striptil for cotton? That was one of his questions that he has. Is how striptil for cotton?
Oh, here in the States, and I would imagine over in South Africa, it's ideal for cotton due to the fact that it's a taproot plant, and we want to make sure we place it right in that area where that taproot's going to be. The other thing that I have found in the last 15 years of doing field work with cotton here in the States is that where we place either dry or liquid or anhydrous with a cotton plant really helps that plant create a larger lateral root system, because we know at about 10 centimeters is the first lateral below the soil surface, and then the second one is at about 20 to 22, and then the last one is down around 90 centimeters. And that one that's down there really deep is the part of the root system that creates that last big push for the number of bolls and getting you the better tonnage of cotton. And when we can do that, because we place the first portion of our nutrients at that 15 to 19, 18 centimeters depth, we really create a better plant for cotton. And that's incredibly important for whether you're naturally rain-fed or you're doing some kind of irrigation.
Yeah, Mike, thanks. I know I'm just reading a few other comments here.
Okay.
Especially pertaining into irrigation and during the first 30 days of growth. I think that was the question that he had there.
Now, is this with cotton?
Mike, can you see it? Can you see the question there now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, so that's his question that he has there. That's his.
Well, in response to that, Garrett, we really see that cotton in those first 30 days of growth seems to be very, very slow. And even in our area where it's starting to get up to 30 degrees already, we want to make sure that we've got that plant in a healthy condition so it will grow that larger lateral root system. And as it does that, we see more cotton bolls created in the mid-season, and that's incredibly important. The other thing is we don't want any of those pinhead squares to fall off, and nutrients are incredibly important in that aspect, because any kind of windstorm in early on, and you've seen pinhead square drop, and that is that's just a huge deficit in how you're wanting to get a yield.
Yeah. Well, I hope these questions, the answers that we gave to you, Gerard, was okay. And please feel free if there's anything else that you guys want to ask. As hy enigiets anders wat julle wil vra, asseblief vra. Ons is hier om julle te help. Dis hoekom ons doen hierdie live striptil conference. Is om meer inligting vir julle te gee. Ek weet ons gaan deur 'n moeilike tye nou. So laat ons help waar ons kan. Mike, I think let's move on to the next question. Is can I use only anhydrous ammonia?
Well, in response to that, yes, you can, but make sure that when you're using an anhydrous ammonia in a strip till environment, you want to make sure you place it down deep enough so that we don't have any kind of burn to the new fragile root that is coming up. The other thing is, I would strongly suggest that the amount of anhydrous ammonia that you apply with the strip till rig, you want to be cautious. And the reason I say that is the ball of gas expands in the soil profile to be approximately 10 to 20 centimeters in diameter. And when it does that, it can overwhelm the plant when they're starting to put on the high equivalency of 200 pounds of anhydrous. That is just a huge amount. Now with cotton, they would never do that. But with a corn crop here in the States, that has been a operation that's been done far too long and has caused some harm to those plant roots. So yeah, you can use it, but be judicious about it and use it wisely.
Ja, so ek hoop daai antwoorde was perfek vir julle. Thanks, Mark. I think that's some good information there. And so the next question, can I eliminate a starter fertilizer since I've already banded fertilizer in a strip?
I have been, as I said, been looking at root systems since 1981. I would never abandon and not use a starter portion. Now, we are studying here in the United States the combination of using our deep place nutrients with half of the starter and then the other half of the starter applied on the planter. And last year, we saw that that gave us one of the best advantages in comparison of the fertilizer trials that we were doing up in Michigan. And yes, I know that Michigan is not much like what we would see in South Africa, but we were seeing a great advantage. So depending upon your environment for the spring that you have, I would never let starter be thrown off to the side. You can drop off part of it, but I would suggest not to let it go. It's such a vital part to being able to give that plant its best potential.
Thanks, Mark. Mike, I think, to another question, there's, I think that's pretty much it. That really tops off on fertilizer, placing fertilizer, what depth to place fertilizer. I think that more concentrates on exactly, which types of fertilizer as well to use. So, we've covered pretty much on these now today and last week. And so I think, we've got to a point now on, focusing on that fertilizer placement between, obviously broadcasting, banding, and, the depth of fertilizer. Mike, I think, another question is how should I soil sample? I think this is a very good question. How should I soil sample with strip till?
I'm glad folks are asking that question because it is a different approach to do it with the strip till system. So consider what you're going to do for the 2021 season over in South Africa and what we've done here in the States to go out prior to when you get ready to plant, whether you do it in your fall months or your spring months, is to soil sample in the zone where you're going to strip and plant. Now, so guys using guidance via the RTK method, they can go out there and locate those particular spots so that if you're on 76 centimeter rows or 1.5 meters or 50 centimeters, depends on your row spacing, always soil sample in that area where your plant's going to grow. Then also take some subsequent ones outside of that zone, label them different, and sample. Now, at what depths? I see that we've got another question coming, but the depths that you want to soil sample are as follows: 0 to 10 centimeters, 10 to 20 centimeters, then 20 to 40 centimeters. Sample those all different, label them that it was in the row where you're going to plant, and then outside of that row, and then get several of those across the field, whether you're using a grid or you're using some kind of zone mapping. That will tell you in a strip till system where you're fertilizing and what kind of effectiveness it's going to be, because it's much different than just going out and sampling one depth of 0 to 40 centimeters and throwing it in a bag or a bucket and sending it off to a lab. Because as you get more proficient with using this methodology of strip till, now you're feeding it where the roots are going to be. And that's what we're really after, is to try to feed that plant where the roots are going to be. Does that help?
Yeah, no, perfect, Mike. I think that's a good answer on that. I think a lot of the guys don't really understand the concept on the strip till manner. So hey, good questions. I think that all boils down to is weed control. We won't talk about that right now, Mike. I think we'll discuss this at a different stage. Definitely, how handling weed control with strip till. I think that is something a discussion that needs to be brought up as well. Mike, what about in very sandy soils? I know you and I had this discussion about very, very sandy soils in conditions of like wind erosion, high wind erosion. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch a mosquito here. There's the guys. Let me just give you more of a background on exactly what's happening. Is a couple of years ago, the guys in the western part of the Free States, Wipstad, Wesselsbron, very, very sandy soils. It's they want to try and leave the material on the ground. You would know this. They'll rip up to about 1 meter deep just to get that moisture. What do you see in benefits on that, Mike, in doing strip till in those lands?
That is always an issue here in the United States too, Brian, especially in what we call the Western Corn Belt. We have a lot of areas that are very sandy, like what you have in the Free State, and I've had a chance to see those when I've come over. We've got soils that have CECs of less than 3, sometimes 1, very, very low. They're loamy sand or even fine sand. They're very similar to what we get when we take off our shoes and our socks and walk on a beach. But they're growing plants in that, and they're doing pretty well, especially when they can reach that water table down there around 1 meter that you've got over there in that area. Well, here in the United States, what the guys are doing then are making sure that they leave their stalk cover from the previous crop as long as possible. I know that in a lot of places in parts of Africa, they're grazing the stalks for a long time with their livestock. And sometimes they graze it till there's nothing left. And I understand that, but if we can leave that stalk standing as best as possible, so how you harvest it to leave the stalk standing is important. And then secondly, with you guys' wind erosion, when that picks up that sand and starts moving it, it's just like a knife, and it will cut off and then also cause a bounce effect and start, like if anybody goes to a pool table and hits the cue ball right into that break of the first set of balls, and stuff just goes all over the place. Well, we want to minimize that, because when you have that scattering effect of the sand, there's more particles to break up and start cutting little baby plants off. But also it moves, and the silt and the clay suspends itself and goes up in the air, and we start losing fertility. We start losing those precious little clay particles which help hold water, and that's just not any fun whatsoever. So we have a method of doing that. We know that if a guy is capable, let's say we run your rows for the 2019 crop was north and south, to then diagonally go across those with the strip till rig at about a 5 to 10 degree angle from that north south. So that would be something going closer to northeast. But that you will knock down some of the stalks, but not all of them, and they will stand better and help protect that soil from the wind erosion issues that you guys get, and like what we get here in the States. The other way to do it is to, some folks will use a different tool. We have a tool at Orthman that is called the stalk puller, and people can go right down that existing row just days prior to them planting and yank out the root ball, and it pulls it out, kicks it up. People can use this with a fairly wide machine, such as a 12 row or 16 row, or and pull it with a smaller tractor at anywhere from 10 to 15 miles per hour. You know, that's getting right up and going right down the field, and then plant right in that existing area where we at, and we have a great opportunity. Then it leaves all that residue on the ground to help protect it from wind erosion conditions, and then also break up raindrop impact.
Yeah, that is a great point that you just brought up there, Mike. I think, especially on the stalk puller, and I think, this is something very new to the market, especially in Africa. And for us to start understanding on that product, as you just mentioned, it's not only just for cotton. You can use it in corn as well.
Yes.
So that's a perfect point that you just brought up there. And hey, I'm not a soil agronomist, but that information that you just shared there with me now about getting that root ball out, I think that is very important. But hey, we can only do as much as we can. I think Mike, you've got a very good friend that asked a question here. Hi, Mike and Brian. Gerard Ruiz. I'm sure, Mike, you know who that is.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Is it good enough to put extra phosphate down at 18 centimeters, or must we put a mixture of fertilizer on soyas and corn?
Well, for Gerard's question, I think I know where he's after. Putting down the extra phosphorus can be an advantage, because once it's placed there, it's not going to move. And if you're wanting to fertilize for 2 seasons, that, especially when you fertilize to hit your target for corn and then also get benefit from the soybeans, or vice versa, that's that's one way to do it. Now, the one thing that it does is how deep you put it. And we want to recommend that we do it at that 18 to 20 centimeter depth. That's really going to be very important. Secondly, placing phosphorus has a benefit in that we can start reducing the quantity. Now, you're talking about extra, Harriet, but we're thinking that here in the States, we're seeing that we can reduce the quantity at minimum of 25% and all the way up to 40% less than what you would be doing otherwise.
Ja, nou, Gerard, ek hoop daai het jou antwoord gegee. Maak so, skus, ek weet my Afrikaans is nie so baie 100% nie, maar
Sure.
please feel free, you know, ask us questions, stuur daai, jy weet, daai vrae deur, laat ons julle help, en sien waar kan ons gaan. Mike, I think, you know, this is pretty much a simple question. This is from Ronald up in Modderrivier area. This is GWK area. If you strip till, applying fertilizer and planting with a John Deere planter with one movement, is there a benefit then two movements with strip till planting with two applications, and how many kilowatts required for each? Sorry, I'm trying to read this, for each row with an application all in once, dependent on the soil type, obviously. You know, I can answer this one as well. You know, I've been to a couple of machines, Ronald, where yes, it definitely goes, you know, what soil conditions and what soil type you have. So, you know, here in Africa, what we have seen is if you're doing a combo, XDR or an XD combo, you're looking at about 30 kilowatts per row. That's now strip till with a planter row unit. Mm-hmm. That's, you know, that's per row. That's from an 8 row, 6 row, 12 row, 16 row. You know, keep in mind it all depends on your soil conditions. But once you start moving to a single machine, just strip tilling apart, you're looking at 20 kilowatt to max, you know, per row, depending on if you're applying fertilizer. Now, bear in mind, if you put fertilizer down, your kilowatts is going to go up, but it depends on what size tonnage you're going to be carrying. Are you going to be carrying a 6 ton? Are you going to be carrying a 10 ton behind you? And like I said, depends on your soil conditions. Are you running in a very sandy soil conditions? That's going to take a lot more kilowatt to pull through. You know, you're dragging through a huge machine with a large amount of fertilizer. Mike, do you have anything from your side on that? I think we pretty much, Ronald, I hope I've answered that question for you. But Mike, do you have anything from your side?
Well, you answered all of the questions that Ronald asked regarding what kind of kilowatt hours that he needs to be able to make that happen. Now, when you to get to it, whether or not it's more effective to strip till separately compared to strip till and plant, that is a grower preference. But you guys over in South Africa have a smaller window of opportunity to get in there with your soil moisture conditions.
Yep.
And that's where the combination of the two tools attached to your tractor, or some people call it the power plant, really comes into your decision making. I see the benefit with both. The one thing that when you're strip till and planting, can't make a whole lot of mistakes. Just that's a no-no. And if you go down, you're done. But if you can strip till and place your fertilizer separately, it gives you an opportunity to know that you're still going to be able to plant at another time or very, very soon afterwards and get the job done. So I'm looking at it in regards to how the farmer wants to make things happen. And if he's very, very timely, you bet. Let's combo
So I
them
think
up.
that topic that you just brought up there now, Mike, between the two, when is the right time to strip till? Are you going to do it a combo, or are you going to do it as just a normal one pass placing fertilizer? I think with this question that just come up now from Lawrence, when would you suggest strip tilling, winter or spring? This is, yes, we spoke about this last week. We're just gonna run through this step again. We're not going to go through it as in depth because our time is obviously running out.
Yes.
But Mike, I think maybe you can just go over that again. I think we spoke about it last week. Between when is the correct time on placing that fertilizer? Straight after harvest or just before planting season?
Well, for much of what you guys experienced in South Africa, I'd be strip tilling in your spring months. That would be probably the better preference. For those that have some moisture conditions, and if they have enough manpower to do it in the fall, and their soils are not subject to wind erosion, I'd get a part of it done in the fall so that your springtime is not such a rush. It just it depends upon manpower, money, time. So I would suggest that part of it, a third of your fields get done in the fall when your soil conditions allow. For those of you that are in your very sandy soils, no, don't do that. Just do your spring strip till and keep on going the way you've been doing. So for those guys that have some heavier textured surfaces, loams, silt loams, silty clay loams, you guys know that they don't blow as much, but they still can if you have some real dry wintertime months. So I think that is probably part of the story. Fix the timing and your manpower issues, because in South Africa, you've got the same problem we got. Manpower is an issue, and being able to get a guy on that machine and do it right is very important. And may I stress that, Brian, strip till is just about as important as your planting. Make sure the right guy is on the tool to do it correctly for you, and because it sets the stage for everything that you're going to do when you plant and watch that little baby plant come up out of the ground and take off.
Thanks. Yeah, no, that's Mike, and I agree. Is that time of the year is critical in South Africa. You don't want to. Our window is very small. There's a lot of growers that know that as well. We've only got 2 weeks. We need to get pretty much everything in, and I think that's a critical time and understanding and when to actually do your strip till and place that fertilizer. But yes, great point. And Lawrence, please, if there's anything, any questions, let us know, and we are willing to help if we can. I think we've got another question here. Is Cobus Erasmus asking a question: is does strip tilling in too wet soil create a course which will make a root penetration difficult to horizontal sides? Mike?
For Cobus, that can be true if we are in the soils when they're too wet. And the way to be able to help consider if they're too wet is to dig down into the zone where you're going to have the point of the shank for a one tripper or any strip till rig. how far that's extended, whether it's 25 centimeters or what, and crumble the soil up and then squeeze it into a ball and toss it up in the air about 25 inches in the air and catch it. If that does not fracture and it just falls into your hand just like a blob, wait, don't get after it. It's just going to be, it's too wet, and you will get a small little cavity that remains open. You'll also maybe get some smearing. Now with our particular shank that comes from our factory, it doesn't really create a smear due to the fact the way that it ruptures the soil. And then the wavy coulters that follow right behind that shank, if they're plugging up, and also your basket behind the wavy coulters are plugging, it's too wet, get out of the field, go grab your fishing pole, go get your dog, go for a long walk, stop strip tilling. It's just not the right time to do it. So having that opportunity to do it correctly is still important. Now, I know that probably isn't a very frequent thing that happens in South Africa, but you want to make sure you do it correctly. Good question.
Ja, nou, Kobus, ek hoop daai antwoord was perfek vir jou. Maar asseblief stuur nog deur. Hierdie is nie die enigste dag wat ons gaan hierdie doen nie. So ons gaan dit nog steeds vir 'n paar dae doen. So as daar enige vrae wat jy het, sit neer, skryf die goed neer. Laat ons help waar ons kan. Orthman het 'n landboukundige, so kom ons help waar ons kan. Mike, yeah, I'm just going through some comments here. Vian asking another question is, when will your seedbed conditioner be obviously available in South Africa? Vian, it is here already. So, we'll definitely get in contact with you and let you know on that. Another question is, Mike, I know this, we've touched bases on this already, Mike, and I think maybe just give us a review on this is, when planting, would you suggest the strip till running ahead or the planter combination? My suggestion, Mike, I think, this has been the topic the whole time that we've been going through is,
sure,
especially here in our country, our situation, I think it all depends on what soil conditions you have and what time, do you have enough moisture in the ground? I guess that's the critical, question. Do you have enough moisture? My opinion is, depends on which part of the country you are in, is to run it separately.
I agree. That is a preference that is probably the best. Now, for those guys though that have that real short window and they're farming a fairly large size where you're farming a couple thousand hectares, putting the combination is really, really good. But having them separate gives a guy a chance to farm some in the winter months prior to, and then the rest of it in the spring, so that the rush of planting doesn't cause everybody so much anxiety and feeling like they're behind before they even start. How are we doing for time?
Well, we've got about 10 minutes, Mike. So I've got another 2 questions here. When should I do soil samples with strip till? Is there a certain time of the year, certain time that soil samples should be done?
Oh yes, there is. That's a great question. The reason is we're still fussing around about when to do it. I have found that the most appropriate time to soil sample is about a month, 2 months prior to you planting.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys plant in what, normally late September, October?
Yeah, pretty much. It depends on what part of the year is and if there's rain. So,
Sure.
the last couple of years, it's been pretty much mid-October, around there.
Okay. The reason I say that, for all of you guys over in South Africa, your winter months aren't as cold in much of the area that they can be in the northern hemisphere. So you're still going to get some of the microbial activity into the winter months to eat up some of the nutrition that was there. They use it to keep themselves alive.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you go into the winter months and they go into dormancy, you're really going to get a chance to, so following that period, you get a chance to see how much was used up. And that's why before they get active in the
Mm-hmm.
spring, your spring months, that's when to sample, because it will give you a true reflection of what that plant is going to go into and how it's going to see it. So, like I said, 15 to 60 days prior to you planting, that will get the job done. Make sure that, as I said prior when we were speaking, do it in the zone where you're going to strip till, and but do get it done before you strip till and fertilize, because if you go back into the zone after you fertilize, you're going to get some incredible numbers to say, wow, I got more nutrition than I ever thought. You're looking at what that background is, and then you supplied it with your fertilizer program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Mike, I'm learning things here, so I'm sure a lot of the other guys are learning some information from you here as well. So I see, Lawrence sent a message here again, Mike. You obviously know more on this. Is on heavier soils with a high CEC, would you broadcast fertilizer or place it with a strip till, or combination of both?
As a soil scientist and hopefully an agronomist that I look at it, I would place it with my strip till, and then also place a certain portion of it, of the total of package that you're after with the planter. And then hopefully there's the opportunity that you're going to be able to put some on during the season of growth, whether you do it when you cultivate, or you come in with some kind of a in-crop fertilizing rig that places it in between the plant rows. That would be the best, so that you apportion it out just like what you feed a hungry teenage boy all the time. Yesterday, I had my teenage grandson out with me working in the field, and I think I was feeding him about every 10 minutes to keep him sustained so he'd work with me. Us older guys, Brian, we know how to go out there and work until, we're just about ready to drop. But you take a teenage boy and he's ready to drop in 10 minutes. And that's the same thing with a young maize plant or a cotton plant. We want to feed it continually, make sure that it's got the nutrition so that it can do as well as you're expecting it to. So I think that maybe gives your guys a good look at how we can perceive this.
That is a perfect, great example, Mike. I think you and I, we've spoken about this topic once before. Is if you're looking at it as a, I know I don't have an empty glass in front of me right now, Mike. Please, come in here if I'm wrong on this, but if you have one, there we go. You see, okay, you've just got it filled with water. But if you imagine the glass is full with money, let's say it's with coins, right? Now, in the center of that coin, let's just imagine you've got your whole your corn crop, everything's lined up, you've planted and you've got these beautiful rows. You imagine you have a glass full of money and your crop is in the middle of that. That's where all your investment has gone into. So I see it as you would rather actually want to go and ban fertilizer, saving costs on fertilizer, saving costs on diesel, saving time. I think, this especially time is the most important thing of them all. So, that's just the way I see things is, you want to save as much because your plant is the one that's going to be benefiting at the end of the day. It's not the weeds that's next to it. It's your plant that's going to be benefiting at the end of the day. So that's the way I see it, Mike. And maybe you have some input on that,
No, you're so right. We don't want to feed the weeds. They do a real good job on their own, and we want to make sure that where you place that seed was right in the middle of the money. Now,
yeah.
You just made mention of a particular fact before I know that our time runs out here. Fertilizing with the strip till system, our capabilities of spreading it out really, really work well for any grower, whether you're in South Africa or over here in the States, because the cost issues. We also know that we become much more efficient. We probably are running, well, let me back up a second. With a broadcast system of fertilization, you're about 15% effective.
Mm-hmm.
With a strip till system, we can be between 40 and 60%, maybe even better effectiveness of where that nutrient goes and how it gets used by the plant. So that's really, really important. And I think that I'd like your guys over in South Africa to know that. That's something that's been studied a lot here in the States. And with Orthman Strip Till, we want to be able to help share that information.
That's great. So just to maybe come on that, Mike, is we want to do a trial, definitely have some trials here in country with strip till. So yes, we are busy with that. So we should have some of those results. Let's hope we'll have some of that information. In the next harvesting season, we should know more. So it's critical. This information is a critical information that we need to give to the growers, obviously to benefit them as well.
Wonderful.
I think this is the last question for this evening from Cobus Erasmus. Is it better to change the angle slightly on strip till year on year, or strip till between the previous year's lines?
Cobus, this is if you're in some real sandy soils, then farming at a slight angle compared to, as we expressed earlier in the show, it is advantageous because you got a lot more stalks that are going to stand and never get knocked down from the tractor tires when you farm at that angle. But it is a personal preference. We see that, though, on how you place your nutrition, if you're farming, let's say, north and south, of coming in between the rows and farm in between and then flip back over 30 some centimeters the next year, and you'll get a chance to help open the soil up well so it has a better job of oxygen and carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and all kinds of other gases exchange, but also open that soil up so that the roots can really grow deeper over a period of years. You're going to get the same results, but a little bit different fashion if you go at an angle. But both work. Now, in some places, though, your landscape, your geography, trees, streams or creeks, they dictate how you can plant or even rolling of the land. So that you want to be cautious about and make sure that it works for you in that particular regard.
Yeah.
1 hour, huh?
Yeah, Mike, I think that's pretty much, I think, dank aan almal wat vanaand en gejoin het. Ons waardeer julle vraag baie. I think, great information, Mike, and so this is not the last time that we're doing something like this. There's still more to go.
Okay, great.
So, I think next time we'll start discussing a little bit more on weed control with strip till. So please leave your comments, send your comments through, even during the week, send your comments through. Once we start going live, we will we'll get to these questions, and we'll definitely answer your questions where we can. So, Mike, lead agronomist for Orthman, myself, the TM and product specialist for Orthman South Africa. We just want to say thank you to everyone, and have a great evening, have a great day, and we will definitely keep you guys posted when we'll come live again. And Mike, thank you very much for this opportunity, and hopefully we can speak to you again.
Okay, I look forward to it, Brian.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Bye.